One, just want to spend a little bit of time and go through with you with the new Victron 10. 10 because it's now a 10-inch screen, so we've basically doubled the height of the screen. So main advantages of that being we don't have any of the pages you have to scroll up and down anymore. Everything's now on one page, there's no scrolling, which is great. Another thing we've also tried to implement as well is a one button push theory. So you should be able to get to anything within one button push. So for example, if we want to go in, see our heating settings, we can come down to here, heating, click on that. And then here is all our heating settings, which sensors we're using, on off points, and the same to return. One button push and we'll revert back to the home page. And we've tried to implement that on everything. So starting with the home page, top box here is relating to temperature. So we can see you've got set temperature here. This orange line will move up and down depending on where the house temperature is. So we can currently see we are a bit over set temperature. If we fall below and we get down to the primary heating, obviously it would display here which heating zones are running, and the same into our secondary. And then going the other way, we will start to increase our minimum vent. And if we get to this point here, so 6 is referring to we're in the 6th position of our minimum vent. We'll get a bit more into that in a minute. If it displayed, say, OT1 or a number above that, that means we're in over temperature and how far we are over temperature. Which stages have been pulled in, inlet positions, calculated airflow. If we click on this box, it will give us the past 3 days worth of runtime data, just as a quick visual to have a look at. We can revert back. If you're running heat exchangers, again, there'll be another page on top of that you can press on for heat exchangers, and it'll tell you how well it's exchanging. Shed temperatures, set temperatures, average, index, static pressures. This is the combo sensor, so that's your humidity, CO2, and NH3 all in one sensor. And again, we can click on that, and there's last 3 days of histories will be displayed here. Moving down, consumption, water consumption, electric, fuel. So fuel could be, for example, if you had a gas meter for gas heaters, that would be displayed there, or maybe a heat meter. It's a bit open, you can sort of use anything really as long as it's a pulse input. Lighting percentages, windows, so if you've got powered curtains or something like that, that will be displayed there. Stir fans, that's recircs, so you can control them that as if the shed gets out of balance, it will bring the recircs up to try and rebalance the shed. Mortality is exactly what it says it is. You got all your live weights here, so if you have the bird weigher with the camera in, that will be displaying its information currently for there. Feed blending, so again this unit can do feed blending without a separate controller, and you've got all your settings here. This unit hasn't got it connected, and again we can click on it and it will give you the past 3 days of history of what's gone on. Reverting down to the bottom is our menu, so we don't have a menu page, so this is all our menu buttons here. So if we go to ventilation to start with, and this is all our ventilation controls. So green line here is all minimum vent. Orange here is where we're transferring from our minimum and we're just adding an amount on before we get to an over temperature. And then the red is in actual over temperature when we start adding more ventilation in. This line here moves up and down to show you what's currently happening. So at the minute we've come off our minimum vent and you can just see we're just creeping up. We haven't got into any over temperature yet, but it's just creeping up. So if we start with our minimum up here, so just take the first line for example, we've got a grow day of 0 and we are asking for stage 3 at 5%. So that's 5% of a 6-minute cycle here. Our inlets at 10%, and we got a max level of 1. So this max level here is basically capping how far this we can use. So we're saying 1 at the minute, So we can go to OT1 and no farther, but that's at grow day 0. So that's more than enough. And we can add more in as we go through the crop. And again, we can click on these lines and edit any of these numbers. You don't have to do it percentage base. If you want to do it live weight, you can click this button here and it will flip it round, and we can do live weight, and we can include the weights coming from the birdware if you wish. We also have a trim button here. So if you feel like, you know, it's a good day outside, the weather's good, and you could get away with a bit more ventilation, for example, you could say we key 10% in here and a positive, and we'll add it on. And the same applies for the negative. You can take it back off if you feel like you're over ventilating. So now we've got our minimum, and then we're going to take it down here. So our set temperatures here, we're going to increase to our start point. So we've got 0.2. Nothing's going to happen with our percentage now. But when we get over that 0.2 and start increasing over this 0.3 windows we've got set here, your percentage will increase from whatever it was at this point, at that grow day, and it will increase over this 0.3 to 60%. Or an extra, I should say 60% on top of what was already set. Obviously all these numbers here are all editable. You can change them to whatever you like. And when we get to the max point, we'll stall for another 0.3 as it's set here. And then we'll go into an OT. The OTs work in the same way as above, but we're just fixed fans. So for example here, we've got 4 stages adding here, and it will bring them on continuously. And then if we go up another 0.5 as it's set here into OT2, and then we can add some more fans on, and so on and so forth. This is obviously only an example one, so don't take too much attention to the numbers in here. And that's pretty much your ventilation. Over here you've got some treatments, so you can treat for humidity, CO2, ammonia. I shan't go too much into that. And that's about it. There's some other pre-settings you can do in the background for vent delays and outside temperature corrections if you want all that extra, but I shan't go into that today. So we'll revert back to the home page, and we'll go into the next one, which is heating and stir fans. So we've got primary and secondary. Primary would be your main heating source. So say if you've got biomass, that's what that would be. And if you had gas heaters, say, as a fallback, that would be your secondary. Variable is for if you've got heating valves, you could use that. Or if you have variable heating fans, we can set them there. In this case, we're just using switched outputs. So we've got 2 zones set. Looking at sensor 1 and sensor 2, we can obviously use as many or as little sensors as we like. The heating's going to come on 0.4 below the set temperatures we've got set here, but again, all editable. And then we're going to stop, in this case, minus 0.1, so 0.1 of a degree before. Now we tend to stop on this controller before we get to the set temperature, because our heating sensors, as our digital sensors, they tend to be very quick in picking up heat change. So what we tend to do is stop a bit before, because it will actually read the overrun of the heaters. A lot of controllers won't ever clock that, but when the heaters stop, you do tend to get some roll-on heat effect down the shed, and this will pick it up. So we do tend to try and stop a bit before. But again, all editable. RH, residual humidity, we can include these, so we can choose which zones we want to include humidity treatments. So you can see we're using our primary, our secondary here is obviously not ticked because we don't want that part of it. Min max, these are purely run times, so if it has to be off for 10 seconds, and if a zone comes on, it has to be on for 10 seconds. That's all that's for. Variable, I shan't go too much in, but pretty much the same principle, except we've got 0 and 100% variables here, or you can go from 20 to 100 or whatever. But yeah, same principle, but we're using a variable output. Humidity controls here. So we can use a set, or we can run it on a curve. If it's set, then we just use the set amount here, so 60%. We cut this control out if we're above, in this case 0.3 above the set temperature, but you can change that to anything. We have a duration time of 1%, sorry, get it right, 1%. No, sorry, I'm telling you the wrong thing. Duration, that's 1 minute, and then 50% of that 1 minute. I was trying to tell you the wrong way around then. So durations, that's 1 minute set there, and we're asking for 50%, so that would be 30 on, 30 off, as that's set at the minute. But again, you can set whatever you like. We can ask here, we can ask the controller to stop all heating if we're above a certain ventilation. So we're saying OT1, so over temperature 1. We want to make sure that the controller is not allowing any heat outputs, which again, we can click on that and edit to that. Boost, secondary heat boost. So if we've got a primary heating output here, saying it's running for a good while above our 180 minutes, set in this case, it will bring on the secondary one to boost it up to the primary. So it's just if the heat zone hasn't quite got to its target temperature and it's been sat there for a period of time, you can just bring the secondary in just to boost it up if you require that function. And that's it for heating. Going down to stir fans. So this is your recirculation fan. So in this case, we are picking 2 sensors, and then we're looking at the imbalance between those 2 sensors. So this has only got 3 sensors, this setup, so we're only looking at the near and far, and then we're basically saying between 0.1 and 0.5 we would run a percentage matching of a minimum of 55 to 75. So we'll move those recircs up and down between those percentages in relation to those temperatures. And again, we can switch the recircs off if our ventilation in this case is above over temperature 2. So all these numbers are obviously all editable, but that's how we've got set here, and that's how that functions. If you don't have speed controlled reswitch, you can still use a switched output, so you can just set points that they'll come on and off at. If you have that, we obviously try and recommend variable because you can keep them nice and low and quiet in the younger days of the crop. So that's that. Let's go back to the home page. What are we into now? Cooling. There's a lot of stuff in cooling. I probably won't go too much into that now, but basically if you've got like misting, you can do that. If you've got sprinklers on the roof and you want switched outputs for that, you can do that. If you have some other means of I don't know, like some sort of aircon or something like that maybe, you can do controls through that. So yeah, there's quite a lot in that, but I shan't go too much into that for the minute. Lighting and curtains. So this is all your lighting control. So again, grow day of what you want to happen at set grow days, the times you want them to happen at, and how long for. So 2100, the lights will start to go down and then off for 2 hours, and then we'll come back up again. And then we'll go down to 0 in this case, and we can go up to 50. So we've got 2 set here because this setup has 2 outputs, one for the centers and one for the outer rows. So you can use 1 or 2, depends on your installation. And then we can do different ones for different grow days, and you can add as much in or as little as you like. The curtains work in exactly the same way, so you've got another page identical to this for that, so you can relate the 2 together if you would like. So again, you can set all this up before your crop goes into what you want, and you don't really have to ever visit it again, which is quite nice. You could leave it to it. So again, we're going to go back to the home page. Feeding. Okay, so similar principle again. We've got the grow days, the times we want them to happen at, and the duration time. So that's all the same as what we've just done in the lighting. And then we've got a repeat function. So what we can do here is we can hit the repeat, and then it will include this column here. So what we're saying is 12 o'clock, we're going to do a 5-minute run, and then we're going to stop. And then we're going to stop for this time here, 6 hours. And after 6 hours, we're going to revert back over here again, and then do our 5 minutes again, and so on. So it gives you the ability to do, if you want to do a sequential on-off time, you don't have to use multiple lines up to try and get that in a day. So here we can do, multiple amounts in one line to make it easier. You don't have to run this feature. If you'd rather display it out, then you can. But it just gives you the ability to try and keep it simple, but still, again, try and get the whole crops of how you want it set done on one page. And again, before you can lay this all out before your crop goes in. Alarms. This is all relating to if you have the feed blend system. So you have the feed blend system, it will obviously report back on what's going through the blender, and then the controller can keep tabs on what's happening. And if a feed period uses less than the minimum or more than the maximum, it'll alarm you to let you know that something's not quite right. Nice little feature down here is a feed shutdown. So when you get to the end of your crop, you can say, right, yeah, I want my feed shutdown on, what grow day I want it on, what time I want it to happen at, and then these are some numbers here we can preset delays in, and what it will do is it will instantly close down the feed blend and let it run the food out of it so it's totally empty. After a period of time, the cross auger will stop and drain all the cross auger out, so that's empty, and then the pans will run for a short period afterwards to empty them out, and then they will turn off, and the system should be then empty. A little bit of playing around with times here to what suits your application, but it's nice and handy when you get to that point because you don't have to worry about any of it, and you don't have to waste any food at the end, which is nice. So back out of that to the home page, blender. So again, if you're running a blender, this is nice and simple. Again, grow day and what percentages you want in your silos. Simple as that. The only thing you got to bear in mind is all these 4 silos must add up to 100%. Or if you're using 2 silos, however many you're using. As simple as that. So back to the home page. Extra control, we won't go into that, but basically these are just generic outputs. So if you want to do something that's not that normal, but you want to be able to integrate some times or some set points on temperature or humidities or any variables in the computer, you can basically pick out different applications and make your own outputs up. So we shan't go back into that. History, again, I'm not going to go into that purely because I'm on remote access. So on the remote access, there's a full cloud service for history, so it's way more than you'd actually have on the controller itself, so it would revert me to that. But on the controller in the house, you can click on this and create graphs if you want to, or just documented, what's happened, and you can pick and choose what you want to view or not view. A lot of people have obviously their set things they want to view for grow charts. As soon as you set them up to what you like, when you come to it every morning, you just hit that button and it'll go, oh yeah, here's the data. You don't have to reprogram stuff. It's nice and convenient. Water, this is for like drinker flushing. Again, not going to go through that. Configure, we'll have a look in configure, shall we? So configure is down to setting of temperature mainly. So again, grow days, required temperature, min max alarms for those grow days. And then if you want to use a table for your humidity, for like treatment of heating or ventilation, you can use that. You don't have to. This is your predicted weight, so it's just a number to base on what we're expecting to see. It's not used as part of the birdware as a predicted weight. We don't have any predicted weights on that front because we don't want any of that error, but it's more there for if there was a malfunction with the birdware, we've got a set of numbers to fall back on if we were using that for ventilation. If not, then we don't use it. Again, we've got some trims down here, so if you feel like you want to tweak house temperatures or weights or RH, then you can put those numbers in here and we can pick that up or drop them down depending on what you want. If you don't want the curves at all and you just want to set the temperature, we can over here change that curve to set, and we just set a temperature in and set our min-max alarms, and that's the end of it. If you want to keep it nice and simple, depends how integrated you want to go. If you want to go mad, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. So it's a very good system that if you really want to keep simple, and we can do the same in the ventilation as well. If you don't want any of the curve points and you just want to set what you want to set, We can get rid of all that and just keep it real basic. And then when we're happy and more comfortable, we can maybe integrate that at a later point if you want that. So again, just trying to be flexible. Setting the grow days, day change. So when we trigger from one grow day to the next, when that happens, at the minute we set 0. So that would be at midnight, but again we could put, I don't know, like 8 o'clock in there. So put 8 for 8 o'clock, and it could happen at 8 o'clock in the morning if you would prefer to have our grow day change at that point. Personal preference really. Full house, an empty house here, so just enabling the empty house mode. So what this does is it just stops the grow day counter. So if you're set up the shed but the bird's not in, say for a couple of days, you can leave it in empty house mode, set it at grow day 0, and it will sit there at grow day 0 to the point you put the birds in, and then you hit full house, and then it will start all the login and start rolling the grow days round. So it's just a way of stalling the computer to when you get your crop in. House numbers is all to do with the cloud. USB, so you can save and read to a USB. Handy for if you had a failure, for example, you've got all your settings. Or if you just want to, you've done some changes in one shed and you just want to transfer it to another shed, you can plug it in, save, pull it back out, into the next, retract the data onto the next one. You can do that sort of stuff. Day-to-day stuff we tend to do on the cloud if we want to do that, but you can do it this method as well if you'd rather. So again, let's go back to the home page, go into alarms. Right, so other than the house temperature min-max, which was in the configure, everything else alarm-wise is in here. So we have an alarm log here. So again, grow days, times, dates and times when it happened, and then dates and times of when the problem was rectified or reset. And then here we then have a log of who's reset it. So ECU, for example, would mean that somebody's come to the actual controller in the shed and hit the reset button. Here you can see someone's remotely accessed and reset it, and you can see what alarms they've reset. So there's a full log of what's been going on. Again, we can use these up-down arrows to view back a bit farther. On the cloud, it holds ridiculous amounts of numbers of past alarms, so we keep a record of what's been going on if needed. Moving down, this table here is water related. So again, grow day, a duration time. So in this case, we're doing 30 minutes, and in that 30 minutes, we have to consume between 0 and 100 litres. So let's try and ignore that and pick one with a number. Let's pick one with a 1, so at least it's a bit more easier. So if effectively in that 30 minutes, if we use less than 1 litre, we'll get an alarm. If we use in that 30 minutes, say more than 100 litres, we get an alarm. And then obviously these numbers will change as you go down the crop. Again, don't take these numbers as what we're using. This is just an example of what was capable. But that's how it works. So it's just a nice way to track, keep an eye on your water consumption. Another thing to bear in mind with water consumption is dark periods. So for example, if the controller goes into a dark period, the alarms are not stupid enough to then go off in a dark period. They are aware that the controller's gone into a dark period, and it will turn off the minimum, not the maximum, but the minimum. So if you said you had a pipe blow off, you'd still get a maximum alarm in a dark period, but you won't get your minimum because obviously they're not drinking it. Same applies for your feeding as well. It takes off the minimum alarm for your feed consumption in a dark period. But again, you've still got the maximum, say, if a pipe blew off. So that's that. Over here in this box on the right is basically just turning what alarms we want on and off. So what sensors we want to include as an alarm. Set points. So for the example, this one here, we can set our min-max positions for humidity. And we can do the same for all of them and feeding as well. The trim function here is if you feel like a reading is incorrect, you can add or take off an amount if you feel like you want to trim it. Down here, we've got alarm test function, same. So if you want to test your alarm, say every day, every other day, once a week, whatever, at set times for set durations, you can set that in here and it will come up in your alarm log as well to say, yep, we've had the alarm and the test is done, and then you can confirm that yes, it's happened. So it's a good way just to test what's going on, but you don't, as a user, have to get involved with physically testing it, because the controller can go, hey, I'll do the test. All you need to do is just say, yeah, I received it. And then everything's confirmed. So it's just a nice, easy way, and a little prompt as well. If saves you forgetting about it, it can be done automated. Again, don't have to have it, but it's there if you want it. Right, test. Now, test is a handy feature, especially for me when other people are struggling. So if you've got to a point in something and you've set something up and it's not doing what you think it should be doing, so you're instantly thinking, there's something wrong, I need to call maintenance. Well, not necessarily. First thing I'd recommend to anybody to come up to do is come into here and try it in test. So, I don't know, let's pick one, for example. Let's pick heating. So we can click on here, and then we can click on primary 1, and then here we can toggle that function on and off and see if it actually physically comes on and off. If it comes on and off, we've then proven that all the hardware is working. So it must be something software related. So then we now know that we need to go back to our settings and just double check what we're doing is actually right, and maybe seek some help in that sense. But at least we've confirmed that the hardware is doing as we want. That's quite an important one. We quite often get people go, oh, this doesn't work, and that doesn't work. And you come to it and you're like, well, it does work, and then you go through the settings and it's normally something that we've just got something not quite set the way that we thought it was going to function. So it's just a nice little handy one, this, to do that. Setup, I won't go into that. Basically, that's more of for a person who's going to be setting up the controller. The controllers don't have to be set to a farm before they go to a farm. We can basically sling a controller out, screw it on the wall, wire it in, and then we can basically say, right, what do all these inputs and outputs do? And then we just tell the computer what they all do on the front of the computer with no other input, and away we go. It's also very handy that if you say midway through COP you want to, I don't know, add another heating zone or add another stage of fans or whatever it may be, we can go into there, pick a spare, input or output, wire it in, and just say to the controller, hey, we've added this. Again, you don't need anybody else out or any specialist programming. It's literally on the touchscreen. So nice and convenient, and also future-proofs it as well. This controller has a lot of IOs on it anyway. We do expansion boards as well if you really need to go mad. Majority of the time you don't, so you tend to have most of it straight off the dot, so you've got that flexibility in the future. Yes, that's it. I'll probably do another video in the coming future and try and go a bit more into depth on certain things. So like the ventilation, I've obviously skimmed over that. There's a lot going on in that page, and I've skimmed over a lot of it, so I'll probably do a video at some point, try and go to the nitty-gritties of every little bit that it can and can't do. So you can see that. But yeah, hopefully that's a good enough introduction of our new 10-inch. So yeah, hopefully we'll see some of you in the future. Thank you.